YouTube, Brian Phillips. We're gonna open this right now. Super excited for this one. We just seem to be getting some amazing jets lately, and this one is no exception. So we're gonna see what XFly has for us today. This is something new and totally unexpected from XFly, and you guys can see from the thumbnail, obviously, but this is the XFly Alpha 80mm EDF jet. Now, I don't know which color I got, but we're gonna find out in just a second. So this is definitely a European style fighter jet, and so it's in an 80mm size class. This thing has all the features that we're used to on bigger EDF planes. I believe it's gonna run on 6S, and we're gonna go into more detail after we get it out of the box, but we're gonna jump right into the unbox. Obviously, check out BitGo Hobby through our links in the video description below, and you can help support our channel by buying it. Once we get this thing out, you can, camera crew, will you help me? Push up on that thing. There we go.
There we go.
Got it. Ooh. It was really fighting me. Goodness gracious. Okay, so, the back of the box has a really good picture. Obviously, looks like some sweet trailing link landing gear here, front and back, which looks really good. There's a big LED on the nose, I remember, and then an LED here and here. So really excited to see if they're day bright. And we have lots of, scale outline for 2 iconic color schemes. Okay, cool. So, looks like this one's in the blue. So, there must be a blue and a gray.
Oh, okay, yep.
So, that must be like the red, white, and blue, which is kind of interesting. Army Air de l'Air.
That looks
like French.
French.
Is it French? I'm not sure.
We don't know.
Okay, so lightweight yet strong EPO. It's got ABS plastic, obviously. 970mm wingspan. That's it for an 80. Wow. That's crazy. Overall length, it's 1250mm long, so it's like really long and skinny. So it's a lot like the Bay Hawk sort of configuration. Mm-hmm. Real long and skinny. Looks like, what do we have for a motor? 3280, 2200 kV brushless in-runner motor, 100 amp ESC, that's pretty good. 7 amp UBAC, that's really good too. So that means that we basically are gonna have tons of power for stabilizers, which is nice. LED lights are 6 of them. It does have a main wiring board, and it's 6 channels, so it's got throttle, ailerons, elevator, rudder flaps, and retracts. They're saying that it's an intermediate skill level with a build time of 20 minutes, and does fly on 4 to 5,000 6S for about 5 minutes of flight duration. That's great for a jet. But there again, 80mm on a small plane is sort of unusual. Mm-hmm. So I'm very excited to see this, and without further ado, we're gonna jump right in.
Is the BAE Hawk an 80, or is that a 70?
We've done both.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. So in this case, this is an 80.
This is an 80.
But I'm comparing it to the 80.
Yeah.
You know, the 80 is about the same size, mm-hmm. but the shape and design of the BAE Hawk is similar, I think, in terms of the wings on this plane. Mm-hmm. Now, they are full functioning televators or telebons. I don't know if they're telebons or probably just a televator, but it could mix and be telebons. I really don't know yet. So we're gonna find out. So this comes in the blue, the red, white, and blue. And what does this say? Please power on the airplane before assembling the flap linkage. This protects the flap servos from being burned because of the transmitter settings. Okay, so we're just gonna make sure we set our transmitter settings correctly before we screw that up. So that is a warning that's included on the actual thing, and it's in Chinese and English right here. Yeah. So I'm gonna set this thing up in the background like I normally do. I'm actually quite excited about a 5-minute flight time in a jet. We don't see 5-minute flight times very often on jets. It is unusual. Now we can get 5-minute flight times, but I think generally speaking, we're looking at, you know, like with this SU, this is a J11, or the SU-27, I think we're getting about 3.5 minutes on the same size, but that's twin. So twins tend to be battery chewers, and this of course is a single engine. So we're gonna start cutting and get this thing opened up right now. Looks like the packaging is every bit as good as what we see from the other main brands and manufacturers, so we don't have any issues there. XFly has been very good in that regard. I like to see the foam to protect the foam from the foam so that the foam doesn't get damaged. And that also helps with the paint and stuff like that. Let's go ahead and take out a wing. Well, that's weird. They actually have no linkage on the flap.
Oh.
So unpainted white, not sure I'm a big fan of that. I really don't have a big problem with naked foam. I know on the F-16 recently they painted the whole thing white, but I just felt like that was a lot of money they spent on it. And I don't see a huge benefit to the end user. That looks sweet. I'm surprised this channel is so narrow. I figured that would reach out a little bit further. But really big barn door flaps. And yes, of course, the entire ring is tapered as opposed to a lot of the North American jets that are gonna have a different wing design. Oh, the CG's marked, that's really cool.
Oh, cool.
And then this is foam though. That makes me nervous because that's gonna be a delicate spot. We do have reinforcement plastic here. And then everything is ball link, of course. Really good high contrast from top to bottom. That's gonna make it easy for visibility. That's one thing that I love is gray, realistic looking military jets, but I love to hate because visibility gets so bad because they're so dang fast. So this should be a little easier to see, I think, than the gray one. But if I was picking the livery, I'd probably pick the gray myself because I just love it. I'm a glutton for punishment too, as you know from watching this channel one time. By the way, we have like thousands of videos. So if you guys are curious about this or other jets or airplanes we've done in the past, you can definitely check out the playlist and see just about anything that we've done in the past. It's a very stout wing, a little bit of twist on the end, but I don't think that's gonna be a problem because I am really, you know, basically trying to break it there. LEDs look like they're gonna be the day bright LEDs too, which is nice. So I like that. And it looks like that warning, they must have just like said, you know, hey, you know, watch out for this. And then we have this DB9, which is an ironic way of doing that. Of course, I know how to build those too, which is nice. And this plastic is actually making up the leading edge. That's a strange way of doing that. I haven't seen that before. And then we have our nut zerts actually mounted into the foam, excuse me, into the plastic. And then of course that makes the connection to. And then there's a wing joiner. So everything feels really stout. It's not a huge wing though. I mean, that's a big plane for not a huge wing. Actually, it's not a real wide wingspan is what I mean to say. Okay, so there is a rolled up manual. That's gonna be annoying. Beautiful tail.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
As you can see, this is a decal on top of a jig painted tip. So it looks like they laid this down on top, which is nice. You'll get really good match. This is not red, white, and blue like American. This is some other country, and I don't know what country it is. So if you guys know in the comments, leave that. And of course that's like a wing fence. I think it's called a fence when it's on a vertical stabilizer like that. This, of course, is a vertical stabilizer. Some more foam to protect the foam from foam right here. And then over here, let's, I don't know if I got the tape totally cut. I'm gonna be careful about that. I don't feel like that's coming out yet. And then this, I gotta cut some more tape to be able to release this. Sometimes you can't roll them out. You have to go straight up with them. And I think that's one of the times right here. Yeah, there, that has to come straight up. Okay, so the manual is in a plastic bag and folded in half. That's regrettable. Looks like a good quality manual like what we're used to seeing from XFly and all the other big reputable brands. And that empties that whole pocket. So we've got the wing joiner rod, which is fiberglass, a little bit unusual in that sense. They probably needed to make up some weight so they didn't have to use a carbon fiber.
Oh, yeah.
That could be, I don't know. Carbon fiber is almost always black.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it sounds like it's carbon fiber. I suppose maybe they used a different type. I'm sort of afraid to pick this up because the nose is still trapped. So I'm being careful about this. I want to pull that out, but I don't want to accidentally damage it. So I'm trying to do this smart because this is kind of like a weird end. There we go, that comes straight out, okay? So once you flip that, you can get down to the nose. So I'll go ahead and look at the stabilators. So these are full functioning stabilators. Now these are gonna be at an anhedral as opposed to a dihedral. They're an anhedral. And as you can see the pivot point there. So that's gonna be similar to what we've seen on other planes, but it's really cool because it's a very clean look, I think. So we'll lay those down there. Of course, they look a lot like the actual main wing in terms of the design. And Very cool. Okay, so that's all out. So now I can pull the fuse. I'm just trying to figure out the best place to pick this up without damaging it. And they've got a fin right here. This adapter is what's used to open and close the canopy, but I broke that off on the J11 and the SU27 like 3 times because I kept bumping it. So I'm trying to figure out how I'm not gonna do that again. And just kind of lifting straight up here. Okay, there we go, got it. That is a really different looking plane. It almost looks like a Harrier to me. And this is just not a plane I'm super familiar with, but it looks absolutely gorgeous. Lots of scale details. I wish it was in English so I could read it, but at the same time, that kind of takes away from the scale presence. This paint is nice and opaque, but it looks a little bit slobby. So it's actually not terrible, but I love the way the nose looks. I like the way that it's finished. I like that the white wraps. Perfect match because we have a painted blue and a plastic that's been painted as opposed to a blue tip that's not gonna quite match. Undercarriage looks amazing, mostly covered up. I like the simplicity here. Gear doors sometimes cause issues on jets, so I'm definitely not opposed to having no gear doors. Accessibility for the EDF module, which is nice. Thrust tubes have been necked down, that's always nice. Beautiful metallic finish. And then of course another day bright LED, and then the pivot shaft for the actual elevator assembly. Now, I'm not sure if this is gonna be a Televon capable system or if that's all driven by one servo. It looks like it's driven by one servo, so you are gonna be married to just the one functional elevator, driven by a 25-gram digital Metal Gear servo with a round control arm. That's so unusual. And look how close it is to the LED wire. That is a little scary. I mean, I'm not really worried about cutting an LED wire in terms of so much damaging the LED as much as shorting your BEC power supply. That's a 7-amp power supply. You'd start it on fire if it cut in half probably, because there's nothing fusing it. You burn out the circuit before you burn your plane, but I still don't want to find out. That being said, that looks like a substantial rod. That's probably a, you know, 4 to 5 millimeters wide. That's big. And it's very robust and very sturdy. So I'm curious to see how that's gonna work. Really like that design feature.
Did you see the tail light too?
Oh, there's also a tail light? Yeah, well, I saw the wire going to it.
Yeah.
But then there's also a light here. So it's very cool.
Yep.
And I love that the lights all blend in, and I love all these little scale details like this inlet. I love the fact that it's just a very basic shape and easy to get together. Also, I kind of love the fact that it's a different plane. I mean, it's funny because when I started this whole shindig into RC, I was a scale fan. That was probably my #1 thing, is I wanted to have planes that I knew and enjoyed and appreciated. Looks like some sort of a vertical fin that goes on the bottom. That's weird. Is that, no, that's like a drop tank, I think. That is a drop tank. So interesting. I haven't ever seen a drop tank that looks like that, but evidently that is. But anyway, getting back to my point, when I started this whole endeavor with radio controlled airplanes and, you know, doing the YouTube channel, I love scale airplanes and I still love scale airplanes. And it's just definitely one of my passions, is having that scale appearance and scale performance. And we have gotten so much better in terms of our scale performance on these planes. I mean, we weren't getting anything near what we're getting now when we started this whole thing. And there were people doing 6S planes when we first started, I think, but it was just a real small minority. It was mostly 4S planes. And then every once in a while you'd see somebody that would go up to an 8S or, you know, on really large planes and things that just weren't, you know, basic bind and fly or plug and fly models. So in this case, we are really getting spoiled anymore. Look at all the contours and machining on that. That is just amazing that they've made this. It's very stiff.
That's cool.
I love the actual canopy. I like the pilot.
Decals and stuff.
It looks really nice.
Yeah.
The instrument cluster's good. But then right here, look at this. This is something that we haven't seen before. We have all the wires come up to this control box, which is kind of a strange way of doing it. Now, I hope we don't have issues with CG, but it looks like they've thought about this, because look where the battery is. Instead of just stupidly putting the battery up here, like we've seen so many times on jets, it makes it almost impossible to load the battery. It looks like XFly has actually thought about where the battery's gonna need to go. Now, of course, we see an XT90 connector, which is gonna be compatible with XT90, but it will also work with of course, an IC5. So you can plug an IC5 directly into an XT90 and you can go ahead and energize your plane. So of course I'm gonna be flying on 5000 Gen 2 50C. I might go to 100C depending on what the recommendations are in the manual. But as you guys can see, that does go in there, okay? Now I'm not gonna actually leave it plugged in because I don't have a receiver in there and I don't wanna like tempt fate. I probably shouldn't have even done that, but I did. And so this battery is in reasonably good shape. It's been used quite a bit and it should fit actually quite well here. But part of the reason why I grabbed that battery was just to show you that this is a huge battery bay.
That's crazy.
I mean, absolutely amazingly big, but looks can be deceiving. There still is quite a bit of cavity in here, but then of course down here, you're gonna lose a lot of the headspace you think you've got. But even still, just remember when you stick your battery back there, you will be blocking some of your air inlets. So just be aware of that. A lot of times these jets have cheaters that come through the fuse and then pass down and you don't want to completely obstruct them if you can avoid it. So anyway, one strap, it's a high quality strap. Looks like it's gonna be kind of hard to reach the strap though. You see how far I have to reach down there to get to that?
Oh yeah, that's true.
So, and I'm just thinking about where these wires are gonna end up. Looks like we have a rudder, aileron, elevator, gear, and flap. And then what's this, ESC? That is so simple and so basic.
It makes it really clean looking with that box
Yeah,
in there.
it really does. I have to assume that that's inaccessible. That's one gripe I have with any company that's doing planes that don't give us accessibility and serviceability. I want a screw so I can take it off. This is glued in, I believe. Now look at this. That, I would really like to see that pushed in and around because this wire is pulled taut. And that goes to this connector. So as a result, I have no way of forcing this down. Yes, I do. I can actually on the bottom one, I just can't on this one because there's not enough slack. See this? I don't wanna unplug it, but I do wanna tuck that down because as soon as you push your battery in there, it's gonna pull down on it anyway. So you see what I'm talking about, folks? That's a little disappointing. I'd like to see that down without having to do it myself because this should have been done by the plant. You see what I'm doing? Now, if you follow and chase that wire back, we may have enough slack to get that, and yes, I just got it. But you see there's a channel there that's been designed, so somebody thought about this in the engineering side, but then the actual plant floor, they didn't actually get that in to the channel. And so as a result, I'm doing it now. Now, again, not a big deal, but just definitely something that when you lay a battery down and you secure it to the bottom of this board, you may yank that cable and unplug it. So that would not be good because it looks like that goes to the aileron, but it is this cable in this case. So I have plenty of slack. This side's not as big a deal. That one was very tight, but you see what I did there? All I did is I just pushed it down into that channel and now we're golden. So I feel comfortable with that now. Also, I think we're gonna do our shelf liner trick when we get to that point, and that's gonna help us to keep and maintain our position so we can have our CG and hit it. Build should go pretty smooth on this, so I think what we're gonna do is we're just jump right in. We're not even gonna look at the manual right now. We're just gonna go ahead and put the wing joiner, and we're gonna pass this thing through. This should be a super easy build. There's such a low piece count. I mean, it's like amazing. And then what I'm gonna do is just wiggle and make sure the connectors outline. Oh yeah, we're good. We're good there. And then you can see the anhedral on both wings. Pretty cool. It's a neat look. It's a different look, not something that I'm used to, but I really like having some of these different planes. As I've gotten a little bit deeper into the hobby, I have found a large appreciation for some of these European planes that I never really even understood anything about until I got into the RC hobby. And then I started realizing like it's really cool to see F-14s and F-15s and F-16s and F-17s. Oh, wait, that doesn't exist unless you ask my wife. All the basic models that we're used to seeing, they are super cool and I love them, even if I've seen 3 or 4 of them. But the thing is, I love the fact that there's even more coming out, which is really nice from XFly. So now we need to get 1, 2, 3, 4 screws to join those. You may notice that I didn't build the tail first. That's just because I don't actually know how I'm gonna flip this over yet, because when I do flip it over, the plane stand, it's kind of got a very heavy bottom on it.
Oh, that's true.
So I'm not sure if it's gonna be inherently unstable because of that or not. So these are the linkages that are gonna be used for the flaps. It does come with a tool. 2 of them, no less. Look at that, 1 and 2. We used to get those with like every plane. And I don't know why they decided like, hey, we don't give those anymore. Okay, here's 1, 2, 3 short ones. And then it looks like there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 long ones. So my guess is the short ones are gonna be the ones that attach the tail feathers. And then the long ones are gonna be the ones that attach the wings up front, because otherwise we won't have enough to do it. So just from doing some basic deduction there, we can figure that out.
Do you want me to grab your flowers while you're putting those in?
The mechanical flowers. Yeah, while you do that, I'm just gonna use the provided one and see if it works. Yep, it does. Now, my alignment on this front bolt is gonna probably take a little bit of effort. So what I'll do is I am gonna jump right over, and I think it's a 1.5 millimeter. I apologize, that's a 2 millimeter. So this is a 1.5, that's a 2. Okay, so I'm gonna start with the back screw. Very easy. Once you get that started, I don't wanna go totally tight. Well, I can probably get away with it. And this gap here, I don't know if you can see this gap here, camera crew, can you see that? This gap where the connector is kind of hard to get closed. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have the camera crew kind of just grab right here, and she's gonna pull toward me, and I'm gonna hold the nose of the aircraft, pull it toward my belly tight, okay, and lift a little bit. Just trying to get alignment. Oh yeah, we got it started. Now just keep hold.
Okay.
All right, now you can let go. And then it just relaxes into position. So I don't know if you guys saw what we did. We basically pinched the back, and then we were able to lever it up against this pinch point. So super easy. This one's going in even easier. Let's see, I don't even think this one's gonna give us a problem. But just keep in mind, the first thing you wanna do when you take apart and reassemble any sort of a plane with quick disconnects like this says DB9 male and female, is to make sure that your control surfaces are working, because if they're not working, it would be a good time to address it. That is sweet. That is a really easy build so far. And it's really strong and robust. It just feels sturdy, which is nice. I hope it doesn't feel sturdy as in fly heavy. I'm a little bit concerned about that because it does feel like it could be on that heavier side. The last XFly plane we flew that was an 80 was the Sirius, right? And the Sirius was seriously fast, but also seriously crazy. That was really easy, and that feels very heavy duty and very cool.
I like that those like pins are already installed and you don't have to try and
do some
align
weird
them
thing
or figure out how to get them in.
Exactly. I mean, I don't usually mind having to cram things in from time to time.
Sometimes it's a little more work than you were expecting.
You mean it's like sometimes it's harder to actually finish a job?
Yeah.
Yeah, that happens.
So.
When you get old.
Yeah.
Hey, so what I was gonna suggest we do is we'll use the plane stand, because then I can flip this on its back, because I didn't want to flip it on its back before I had the wings, because I didn't have anything to hang on to.
Oh.
So now I have the wings, and this thing just feels solid.
It does. It like looks, I don't know.
It looks cool.
It does.
I'm really excited for it. And I love the twin outlet. I just think it's gonna sound good too. I know the 80 millimeter EDF.
Are you using the short screws now?
Yeah, these are the short ones. The 80 millimeter EDF that we have on the Sirius sounds sweet. So I'm seriously hoping this one's as good. Okay, so that's super, super easy. Thank you, camera crew.
Yep.
Okay, so we're gonna get this one going. Just nuts, certs, and plastic, guys. It's plastic to plastic. I mean, this is about as easy a build as you get. We haven't had to use glue for any serious builds for a while, which is just a great problem to have. Okay, so that one didn't go down all the way though. That makes me wonder if maybe I don't have perfect alignment, maybe? Do you see what's happening? It feels like it's bottomed out. Give them a close look at that. Let's see if maybe there's one of those screws is actually longer than the others. Go ahead and grab that one for me. Let's put them side by side. Yeah, I'm just gonna get this one and see if it does any better, if it changes anything. I'm gonna look for alignment on the actual shaft. Maybe we don't have alignment yet. That could be what we're dealing with. See, there is definitely a hole that you're hitting, guys. Let's just reevaluate that. See?
Oh.
So you definitely want to be making sure that you're hitting that hole. You don't want it to act like a set screw. You know what? I'm actually beginning to wonder, do you think maybe I'm supposed to be using long screws here and these are for something else? I suppose that's possible. Like that's for the tail maybe?
The manual would maybe
The manual
tell you.
might answer that question.
Are you having a plastic problem? Like if you put a little bit of soap on it?
No, it's definitely aligned. I can hear it moving the servo. It's definitely going. It's just that it's not seating all the way down. You guys see what I'm dealing with there? And I mean, look at this. It ain't going anymore. Well, it's fine. I mean, it's in there, obviously. It's keying into the hole, so. I just wonder if I've penetrated a little bit too far, so I'm getting a misalignment on the screw. But if it's going straight in, it's gonna fit into the countersink. I don't know, it's in there. We'll see how it does. Once we do the control surface test, we can verify that, double, triple check it. Okay, so now we need to do the vertical stabilizer. In terms of, that is a really nice size. Seems like it's bigger than 900 and whatever, 970 millimeters, is that what they said?
The body of it is so like stout though, that it seems.
Well, I think it just, like,
big.
it reminds me of a Harrier, and the Harrier had kind of a unique shape to it like that. But I'm just curious to see how fast this thing is. I bet it's really fast. Okay, so there's this wire, which is gonna go to a servo lead, and I see a singular servo lead there. If you wanna show them from this side, why don't you switch sides? You see that singular servo lead I'm seeing?
Oh, yep.
Right there. I'm gonna grab that with my screwdriver and see if I can walk it out. I have to assume that's what I need. Oh yeah, that worked. That was way too easy. So guys, all I gotta say is, okay, and then servo here, I can't tell what it is. I have to assume it's a 9-gram metal gear because you can see the metal gear on the output shaft. Sometimes these metal gear servos on the cheap planes will have a metal output shaft and then it's plastic gear inside. This stuff from XFly has been really high quality, so I doubt that's what they're doing here. Okay, so this is red, white, and black to the brown, red, and yellow. So it's like the Futaba color code and then the JR Hextronics color code. So I'm gonna just go like this. So white goes to yellow. Of course, red goes to red in the center of both of those. And then black goes to brown, okay? So now you wanna, when you feed this down in here, you wanna be very careful that you get clearance for all that stuff. So I want this to go forward. And if you're curious about that, or if you think it's gonna be of any consequence, you can glue it or tape it, whatever you think you wanna do. Now that's plastic on plastic, guys. Notice that, plastic to plastic, not foam to foam. That is just amazing. Wow. I'm loving that. That is a really dang good fit. And yes, 2 long screws. We must have done it right because I don't know how else you would do it. There's basically 2 keyholes, and if you, it just leaves no room for error. I love that.
And then you have 1 extra of each.
1 extra of each, like we've come to expect from pretty much all the major variety of brands, with the exception of the rare occasion on like a nose cone spinner. That's about the only time you won't see a spare. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Well, it's because they usually, a lot of times it's the same as like the main wing connection points. Okay, so noting these are also ball link, which is really nice. I'm just loving the fact that all this stuff is just basically slide it together and go to town, because that's a pretty easy disassembly. Now, if you wanted to store this and you wanted to take the tail off, because the tail is the tallest part on here, you can take that tail off, lay it on its side, and then just leave it attached wired-wise. Or if you're taking this in a car and you have a smaller car, and first of all, this is a small plane anyway, but you can undo 1 wing in a matter of seconds, and then you can put that thing in your car, and it's gonna be like super easy. Okay, so I'm quite excited to see this thing fired up, but we're obviously a little bit a ways away from that, because we still have to do the linkages for the flaps, but I am gonna be a good boy and not do that before we actually do our radio setup because of the warning. Now also this thing, which is obviously gonna be like a drop tank, is just a different looking drop tank than I've ever seen. I think it's a drop tank, guys. Let me know in the comments below. I know you will if I'm wrong. Did I do that backward? Does it go this way? Yeah, I can't honestly tell. Yeah, it goes this way, I think. That is very unusual. I'm so not used to a drop tank that looks like that.
No.
Okay, so let's give the guys some skill lines. Oh, that is so cool. Looks absolutely fantastic. Can't wait to see this thing in the air. Going like 100 miles an hour right next to the camera crew. Okay, so I'm gonna lay this down so that the landing gear could come out if I need to, and I don't have to worry about the bogies breaking or breaking off or anything weird, getting in a compromising position. We're gonna reset and we're gonna get a receiver so that we can talk about our radio setup, which is gonna start next, so stay tuned, guys. All right, guys, so we have radio choices, 631, 637T, or we can do an AR 8360T, which is gonna give us additional channels. Now I'm gonna just kind of run down my choice picks and why I would go with this. Now the 631 is gonna give us all the bang for the buck from stabilization and auto leveling, which would be AS3X and safe, as would the more channels with the 8360T. This also gives us the added benefit of being able to run the telemetry from the pack voltage for flight pack voltage, but you can get the same thing in the 637T. I don't think I'm particularly be concerned with flaperons or crow on this plane because they have such big barn doors built in already, and these barn door flaps are gonna work nicely. And so I don't think we need to worry about crow. Now, if you're gonna set up crow, which is where the ailerons would act as spoilerons while the flaps were down, or if you wanted to do televons, you're gonna have to do modifications beyond what we're gonna do in this video. You could potentially use this and do televons, but just keep in mind, there is one shaft, it controls both sides of the stabilators. So you don't necessarily have that flexibility as it's designed. So in my case, I think I'm gonna lean toward the 631 because we don't necessarily need the flight timer, the telemetry on the pack voltage. It's nice to have that feature, but I'm okay with this. Now, the other thing too is because we're gonna be using the NX8, we get channels 7 and 8 basically available for gains and for AS3X/safe/ off. So we get our mode and we get our rate gains all on a 6-channel receiver. And you're like, well, how do you do that? Because then of course you can use the 7th and 8th channel. It's just not pluggable. So we've got elevator, rudder in no particular order, ailerons, flaps, retracts, and then of course throttle. So did I say that right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's all the channels we need. That's 6, and we can definitely do that. So I'm gonna actually avoid using this, which is a considerably more expensive option. But if you decide to get this over the 637, you actually do get that for just, I think it's like a $15 difference to go up to the 8 from the 6. But the only time you're really gonna get a lot of advantage from that, in my opinion, is if you're using a 10. Because if you get NX10, then you could take full advantage of all the channels on the 8, which is part of the reason why I haven't historically gone with the 8 very often. It's just tough to do with a 6-channel transmitter. You give something up. I don't like giving anything up. So in my case, I'm gonna use the 631. It's gonna work well. Now you could also use the 630 if you want the end pins as opposed to the top pins. And then you do lose the antenna. Now, because this is gonna be going pretty quick, it is an EDF jet after all, it's gonna carry some speed, it's gonna get far away from us. I feel a little bit better with the external antenna, but Spectrum, of course, claims that they get as good or better range with the internal antenna. I don't necessarily buy it, but at the same time, it's so far beyond line of sight for what we're doing that generally speaking, we just never have issues with it. Now, some of you guys buy if you're like next to 7 cell towers and some radioactive nuclear reactor, whatever it is. We don't have problems out here. So I'm not sure if that's just some fluke of your environment, but Spectrum has been wonderful to us. We've almost never had issues. So that being said, the second thing we need to do for considerations on radio setup is of course a battery. And you're like, but that's not radio setup, Brian. It kind of is because we need to know that we have a spot to mount the battery and the receiver, okay? So now obviously we have all these wires we talked about in the unbox portion, and then we have this wire. So it's actually gonna be super clean if I can put it up here somehow, because we have plenty of length. We can pretty much reach wherever we want, but just keeping in mind, we don't wanna have that pulled tight, so we maybe tape that to the side or whatever we need to do. And I do see that they've already got a channel that goes up here, so I'm not sure why they have this separate like that, but they do. So it is what it is. Now, there's also a channel over here. Why didn't they run that back? That's pretty goofy if you ask me. So this is gonna be allowed because this is a spatially aware Receiver, we have to pick a spot that we can mount it so it's either flat, like this, like this. I don't think you can do that. I don't think you can do that, but even, it doesn't really matter. You can pretty much mount wherever you want inside of here, so long as it's not at an angle where you're splitting the difference on two different planes of control authority. So like you want to be on square to the pitch axis, square to the roll axis, and square to the yaw axis. That's what you want to do. And this will help you do that, and it will automatically calculate its position as part of the forward programming where we go in and set up AS3X and then later add in safe as another function. So if you're curious, if you're a newer pilot and you're thinking about this plane, my guess is most EDF jets of this echelon are not going to be good for beginners, but it might be great. I doubt it though. So just remember, if you're thinking about doing this as a beginner, just probably don't. But we're here to help you, and if it's good for beginners, we'll let you know that. Not because we want to sell you guys planes that you can't handle, because we don't want you to buy planes you can't handle, even though we do benefit from commissions that come from companies when you buy these things. We would rather set you up with a plane that is appropriate for your skill level so that you can enjoy the experience and not become a one and done. So like if you're like, Brian, I want that plane, I must have the 80mm Alpha Jet from XFly. Okay, congratulations. Buy one, put it together, get it all radio set up, do your practice, follow along the video, and then just keep it on the shelf. Don't fly it, get a simulator and start working, and then get an easier to fly plane and work your way up to what you want to be at. But that being said, with AS3X and Safe, it is easier to get in the air than it's ever been. Okay, continuing on. So now we got to locate our battery. The first thing we're going to do for that is we're going to do our little trick that we do pretty much all the time. I'm not a big proponent of putting Velcro on packs. It seems like they're always in the wrong spot, and I don't like covering up labels and all this stuff. So what I generally do is I will use whatever provided Velcro comes with the battery. And I do kind of want to pay attention to which side I'm putting down. I should have probably checked that first. I think usually I want to see what I've got on my other batteries. I do have some with Velcro on them. It's usually the soft is on this. Okay, so I'll put the firmer hook and loop down. And then the other half is going to go onto shelf liner. So shelf liner, of course, is just going to give us something. So instead of sliding like that, once you get that strapped, it won't move. And we're not, trying to like mount it permanently until the end of time. You just want it to not slip a lot. And so to be honest with you, you could probably do like 3 planes with this much. You could cut it up and just a little teeny bit will go a long ways. But that being said, this came with the plane and I have a lot of planes. So I'm just going to use the piece.
And the shelf liner is like dirt cheap. So
this stuff is
like
cheap. Yeah.
And so
that's right. And this is going to be a little bit of an educated guess here, guys, because I believe I'm going to be able to stick this down. Now, remember how we pushed those wires under earlier? That's because we're going to need to have this somewhere, probably in the middle-ish area. And then we're bridging a large, wide gap in the center, and that's not uncommon. Now, if you decide to use a battery that has Velcro, you can peel this out, no problem, and then you can use it, okay? But in my case, I'm not gonna do that. I'm just literally gonna put this battery in here and hope for the best on the CG, but I know where the battery is going to roughly be. Plus or minus maybe an inch forward or an inch backward, because you're not gonna go any further than the bulkhead here, you're just not. There's nowhere to go back, but you may need to go further forward, and if that's the case, I can always change where I've mounted things, okay? So also we have the benefit of a very long power cable, which is nice. We don't always see that, and I kind of wish we did more often. Also, this battery is pretty wide in the 50C. It's actually a little bit wider than the 100C, which is weird. But if you can't quite get it that way, you should be able to do it vertical like this. And for the sake of our testing today, I do want to see if I can get it in here this way. So just to give you guys an idea of if you're going to be able to get yours in. But you can see it's a lot harder to get it in there because the thickness is going to trap that point. Okay, so now I'm going to push this all the way back so that it's centered. That gives us, a couple fingers from the back. Okay, now I can't get in there and easily measure because of course it's trapped. Now the other thing is, as you're doing an Unbox build radio setup, you may find in the course of events that you like to have a pair of forceps available and then some small zip ties, which I'm gonna grab now because forceps and zip ties are really nice to be able to just do cable management as you're working through the ranks. Now also, you're gonna need to put on the flap linkages, and that's fine, but we wanna get the flap servos set up first. These are just little like 4-inch Zip ties, nothing special about them. We don't do a ton in terms of cable management when we have a nicely set up plane like this though. And also I wanna just look at the clearances here. When I drop this down, just thinking about how much room I have, I'm not gonna be able to put the receiver right there. It'd be cool if we could put it there, but it looks like we have a real plethora of space here. I cannot conceive of a time when I'm gonna have a battery up here, so I'm just gonna go ahead and assume that the transmitter can sit right here. Now obviously we have plenty of room for plugging, and one trick of the day, you can actually plug in that. You see how I've got my positive lead plugged in, and then that'll help simulate and hold that in place without actually hooking it up. Just be careful you don't damage your smart lead if you're using an IC5 connection. Also, these are forceps, so they go in there, hemostats, so you can click down here and it will bite really hard out here, almost like a clamp, okay? So that works really nice for when you gotta get these battery leads pulled out and they're tight next to your battery. But you see what's going on? It's not wanting to pull through. So sometimes if you get that, the best thing to do is before you get out in the field and have to fight it out in the field, work the glue free. If it's glued a little bit, you see how it's glued? That's gonna be a pain in the butt. So what I wanna try to do is see if I can do it without breaking this wood. I'm gonna support with my 2 fingers as much as possible and try to pull this through. If you don't do this, you're gonna struggle every time you put your battery in, into perpetuity. And a lot of times you can break them free. Sometimes you can't. There it goes, guys. You see what I'm talking about? So you gotta get that thing broke free and then just work it a little bit like that, okay? So once that's through, now I can go ahead and stick my battery in and really get it in there with some level of impunity and not have a bunch of problems, okay? And look how easy that is, okay? So remember, just do that crap now while you're inside. It's raining, it's crappy. You know, we don't have some big burden of time management that we have to worry about, you know, like the sun going down. And so it's always better to get this crap done while you're inside and sort of setting up your plane for your maiden flight. Also, those forceps come in really handy if you need to try to bring a little bit of slack up. In my opinion, you shouldn't need to use forceps, but once you get this thing set, you'll probably leave it in the same position because you're gonna use generally the same battery unless you're some sort of a weirdo like me. Okay, so now that battery is roughly where I think it's gonna end up, and we definitely have plenty of clearance when we put that thing on because there's this big cutaway, so we should have no problems getting that on. But if you're still concerned and you still need to double check, I'm gonna go ahead and plug that back in just to simulate having the battery plugged in and simulate where the wire leads are gonna go, and I'm gonna simulate this all being inside of the cavity. Again, this is all just regular due diligence for putting in a receiver. Part of the reason we show you all the steps is because here on Brian Phillips RC, we are trying to help steward the next generation of RC pilots or the people that are just in it still, okay? As you can see, we hit those leads. Now, some of you might think to yourself, I don't want those leads bumping the bottom of my canopy, because you see what happens? That's a pretty solid, that hits. Like yeah. It's not gonna just pop off easily, okay? But if you don't like that, keep in mind I do have one extra twist in this because I've only plugged in the positive side. So when I flip this around, you can manipulate how you've got that memory from the lead, okay? So I'm just gonna go ahead and tuck this down here slightly differently, and then that'll actually solve that problem. Okay, so I'm gonna go around like that, just like I did before. Okay, great, so I think I'm totally good to put it here. I could also put the receiver back here, but then that's gonna be a real pain in the neck if I wanna try to load straight down with my battery. So I think this is the place we wanna be. And of course, these Spectrum receivers are really high quality, and I'm sure some of you guys don't, you know, end up using the Spectrum because they're maybe a little bit too expensive, or you use something that's even more expensive. And to be honest with you, we just think they're a great middle of the road option. There's definitely some cheaper stuff out there, but the cheaper stuff tends to be pretty, you know, questionable. We've had pretty good luck with Lemon. We've had pretty good luck with a couple of the orange things that we used in the past and didn't have a lot of problems, but we just feel like Spectrum is so much more solid and reliable, and we just almost never have problems with them. So we do like them a lot, and I do love the forward programming. I wish we would have had that when we first started in this hobby. It would have been so much nicer. Okay, so obviously we'll link to this. If you buy from these links, you do help to support us financially with contributions from Spectrum or Horizon or whoever we're working with at the time. If somebody sends us a receiver to use with an airplane, we always link to whoever sent it. That's kind of our rule. So in case you guys were wondering, we don't ever mean to mislead in that regard. We pretty much just say it the way it is. So, all right, okay, so now on this receiver, you can see that there's pins and it says negative. So the negative is down here, so that'd be your black or your brown. Positive, of course, is always gonna be red. And then S is for signal. And then you've got a bind program or SRXL2, which would be like a serial protocol for communicating multiple channels through one wire. But in our case, we're gonna be hooking up channels 1 through 6. And then this is the bind button. So when we're ready, and we can put this any direction. We can put it this direction, we can put it that direction, we can put it this direction. I would suggest centering it in the aircraft, and I would suggest, of course, getting that mounted to some degree. I don't like having that antenna in a position where it's gonna be vulnerable to damage, so I am gonna be careful about how I route that. I am a little bit tempted to just kind of just stick this down underneath, but I'm always nervous about feeding them right next to the battery, but it looks like I can actually get it in there. But then
nice.
I'm actually hitting the back side of my Velcro because there was an opening there and it's kind of preventing me from sliding it. So this is a coax cable, so you don't want to kink it real sharp, but you can actually double it back if you're not careful. Just don't do a 90-degree bend. That's probably about as much as you want to do on that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a 90-degree bend, and that's just so I can fit it under here and see if I can. Now, again, you don't want to clamp it with your forceps, but I can use my forceps sideways to just push it through. See? Now look how nice that was.
Oh, that's pretty nice.
Yeah, that's a pretty clean setup. I like that a lot. Okay, so now how are we gonna mount that thing? There's a million different ways you can mount your receivers. In our case, we many times use Velcro, and Velcro is not necessarily the only way. Of course, you can use 3M double-sided tape, you can use some hot glue, whatever you wanna do. I've got these extras from back in our days when we used a ton of lemon receivers. This is just happens to be what came in those things. And for whatever reason, I didn't always use them, so I just kept them. And
in our kitchen drawer. No.
Well, I mean, of late.
Where everybody keeps their hoarding tendencies.
Yeah, wherever they can get it. Okay, so now, remember earlier when I fed that in there, I'm gonna be basically sticking this down on the bottom side. Now this is a double-sided tape with like foam backing. So it's gonna give us the little bit of vibration isolation, but you know, it's like, I've mounted them solid. These foam planes don't generally give you a lot of trouble. If you do have a problem with that, oh, by the way, I'm gonna get an X-Acto knife. That's one thing I've learned about those lemon 3M tape, whatever it is that they're using, whatever brand it is. I have a really hard time getting the green side off. I have a really easy time getting the white side off, but they're both about the same tacky and stickiness. And so I'm gonna have to pull that out halfway at least. But what I usually do is I'll take an X-Acto knife and I can get in there and just twist. And even if I undermine one small little bit, it will allow that to release. And then once it's released, it's really easy. See? But I don't know if you guys noticed what happened. The backing, which is this label, was pulling off. I'm not really that worried about it because I've never had a receiver pop free except for after a crash. And after a crash, you pretty much screwed anyway. So you might as well reinvestigate and then you can reapply. Okay, so I've got that somewhat straight. You do want it pretty close to straight, and straight like this, straight like this, straight like that. It doesn't need to be this position. You could do it the other direction if you prefer. You could do it on the side. I just like to get it in the center of the plane. Toward the center of gravity is kind of cool, but I don't think it's really necessary anymore because we have so many controls over the way the gyros and stabilizers work. Now, one thing I want to point out is the vulnerability of my antenna compared to if I would have put that the other way. You see how this antenna shoots down into this opening? Now that's all hunky-dory until that battery slips and hits this and crushes that. Then you're gonna have your antenna is gonna be largely disqualified from the circuit. But this thing will not move. It will not move, no way, no how, unless I crash. And if I crash, you're gonna be screwed anyway. And it's crazy because I've crashed a lot of planes and almost never lose the receiver. And I've had planes that are in multiple pieces and the receiver always seems to live. I don't know how, I don't know why. I have damaged receivers, but it's very unusual. So there you have it. I'm not sure why that is. All right, so now this wire obviously needs to come back to throttle so we can power the thing. That's gonna go into channel 1, we already know that part. But then the rest is going to come as we do radio setup. Now we have to decide, are we gonna go to this side or are we gonna go to that side? I think because throttle's on that side of the receiver, we're gonna tend over here. Now, we could also drop it down and go under, potentially, which I hadn't thought about. I wish I would have thought about that before I put in the actual...
Put in your Velcro and stuff?
Yeah, it would have been easier to drop that through. I don't know if we have enough length. I was also thinking it would make sense to go into this little channel that XFly has put in, and I wonder how hard it would be to replace that.
Yeah,
you see what I'm talking about?
I was wondering about.
That's pretty firm stuff, whatever it is. It's like hard plastic. And I wonder if they're using that as some sort of a structural support. Now, I could tape that there, or I could go under, and I think it's probably worth trying going under. So let's just try that. We'll pull the battery out real quick. Sorry, folks, for not catching that earlier. So as you can see, I'm just gonna lay this probably in the inlet, so it's better in the armpit of the wing over here. But you guys see what I'm talking about. I can unplug this and see about possibly feeding this underneath my now installed Velcro. And my guess is it's probably not gonna go worth a crap now that I've got that Velcro installed. It's gonna wanna catch the Velcro, as in the backside of the sticky, tacky side of the Velcro. Oh, look at that! Miracles happen every day. What are the chances, right? So now I'm gonna just see if I can get that to pass through all the way down. And then we'll just kind of grab that whole connector. And then I can grab the backside of the wire here, get away from the antenna so I don't damage the antenna inadvertently. Push the tip of that down. And I don't know, oh, there we go. Okay, so I made it through. So now I could potentially try to go all the way under here, actually. That's gonna be sweet. I did not expect that to work.
Not that easily.
No, totally didn't expect that to work. Are you kidding me? What are the chances? Look at that. That is a miracle. That never works that easy. I'm so glad I didn't do it the other way now.
But I wonder why they didn't do it in the first place then.
Well, I don't know. I'm sure there's probably like one person that's going to put the receiver on the other half of the aircraft, and they wanted to accommodate that person. I don't know. So now I've got the plastic bit on here, and it's going to be quite challenging to get that tip out. It's always bad if you're, trying to wiggle your tip into a really tight spot and you're getting resistance. But it's very rewarding when you finally penetrate the surface you're trying to penetrate. And as you can see right here, look what's going on. That is one worry, is that if our battery slips and it yanks on that, we want to make sure it's not going to undo this. So I am going to make a pretty tight bend here, and I want to show you guys what this looks like. So you may not even want to do this. You may want to exit here and come up because you'll save a lot of length. But you see what I'm talking about? My issue is now if that battery were to slack here, if it were to slip and pull hard and pull tight, it's not impossible that it would try to unplug that. Not from the plug, but actually ripping out of the connector. And that does make me somewhat nervous. I wonder if I can pull some of this ESC line here and then just like force that into the, yeah, you see what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. That is about a ½ inch away. I think I need to double that back.
And go back.
Yeah, it's not worth the risk. I got to go through this side. It's a lot cleaner looking that way. If I knew for a fact my battery wasn't going to need to go here, that'd be fine. But I do not know that for a fact, and I'm not willing to risk unplugging the BEC, which is a big problem if you do.
Yeah.
You will lose your plane, your entire plane, if that happens. And that creates a very dangerous condition where you would be out of control totally. Because you wouldn't even have your receiver working. It's one thing to lose an engine while you're flying. It's another thing to lose your entire control system. That's dangerous. You want to avoid that type of condition at all reasonable costs. Okay, so now let's see how we're doing for length. I feel like that length is way more appropriate because now I've got that all the way to the bulkhead there. Yep.
And it's still way cleaner than having it come all the way through.
Totally agree.
Cavity.
Yeah. I mean, but you got to stick it in where you need to get it in, I guess.
Right.
So, all All right, so you guys see what I'm talking about? I don't know if they can see that on the video. I'm gonna press this. See how that's all the way tied up against that bulkhead now? And we still have slack. I mean, barely any, but it's still slack. Slack is slack. Okay, now we'll just leave those ones unplugged for a minute, and we're gonna have to revisit that here in a minute once we actually get the radio setup part done. And I don't even know if we're gonna use like one zip tie, just because the radio setup is gonna be so clean on this install. And I am absolutely loving that. So our next move is gonna be setting up our radio setup so that we can build a profile, and that's gonna tell us where to actually land each of the cables. So let's do that real quick. So this is where we're gonna jump into the NX8. If this was an NX10, it would be almost exactly the same process. You might use a different receiver if you wanted to add extra features, but also if you were using an NX6, you'd have 7 channels, so you could technically do this, but you would lose master gain or you would lose mode. So in my case, I want that 8th channel so I can do master gains, because that will give me a chance to have a much more desirable maiden flight where I can actually have control of that and lower the amplitude of the gain on all 3 channels. Now, if you had more channels available, you could potentially set up so you could actually control each of the axis. So you could say, hey, I want less gain on elevator, on pitch. I want less gain on roll or more gain on roll. And I want maybe a lot more on yaw or whatever. And then you can set those values so that they're fixed at some point. Okay, so first thing I'm gonna do is back and cancel and add new model. And then the camera crew is coming around. I don't know why she's over there. Okay, so we're gonna create a new acro. Here you could pick whatever else you want. In our case, we're gonna pick that, and that's gonna be an acro. It's gonna create a new model. And the reason we're doing this now is so that we know where to plug what. And if you're used to dealing with Spectrum, it's pretty much always in the same order, but I like to show this process for people that are learning how to set it up. I mean, this would not be a new plane or for a new pilot, but this plane might be for a pilot that's coming back to RC that knows the skills of flying, or maybe new to Spectrum, okay? So model select is where we just came from. Model type, that's already been set. And then model name, we're gonna go ahead and type it in here. This is the 135th model. And then we're gonna go ahead and type in the name here. I'm using the legacy keyboard, but I'm on 3.08 beta. All right, so we have the Alpha 80 XFly, that's what I did. Okay, then aircraft type, we need to change the wing to 1 aileron, 1 flap. The tail's gonna be standard. Then we'll hit next. We'll select an image. Standard image files, I don't know which one we'll probably pick. That, we can do that. The Habu, good enough. Okay, then F mode setup. I do need to set up an F mode, which is a flight mode. I want my switch to be here. Switch D, there'll be 3 modes. I'm gonna have landing gear retracts here. I'm gonna have flaps here. I don't use C for some reason on most planes. Sometimes I have like a unusual feature here, like an auxiliary thing. And then I'll use this for AS3X only, off, and then safe. Auto leveling, okay? So I'm gonna leave that there, and we will, I accidentally scrolled. If you make a mistake, just scroll again, and it'll set it back to what you need. Now you can change here, and you can also do a matrix of multiple switches. If you ever decide to like set 3 and 3, it'll have a matrix of 6 different selectable modes, okay? Now in this case, I'm gonna do spoken flight mode like I normally do. And so in this case, this is what's gonna be displayed on the screen right about here in the regular mode. And then I'm gonna make it say what I want it to be. But just keep in mind, as I change these things, this doesn't change the mode. It's just a title, okay? Okay, so now I'm gonna click cancel, cancel, and then type in AS3X. We'll be right back. Okay, so AS3X, and then the spoken part, we have to scroll way down to here, all the way down here, and it'll say AS3X. Okay, AS3X mode.
AS3X mode.
Okay.
Flight mode 2. Flight mode 3.
Okay, so this one I'm gonna highlight cancel, cancel, and then I'm gonna type safe. So the word safe, sensor-aided flight envelope. Now I wanna change this all the way down here to safe. We'll be right back. And safe mode.
Safe mode.
And then this one's gonna be nothing or off. So I'm gonna just find off, which is down about halfway. Okay, there's silence or off. I'm gonna change flight mode 2 to off. So just click cancel, cancel, and then I can type the word off, O-F-F. Whoops. So guys, basically what you get then is you get ASRX mode.
AS3X mode. Off. Safe mode.
And remember, that's just an audio event and a label. It doesn't actually make the mode work, but we'll set that mode to the flight control, the flight mode 1, flight mode 2, flight mode 3, which are controlled and commanded by switch D, okay? All right, cool, so we got the Alpha XFly AS3X,
Off. Safe mode. AS3.
which is really handy because then you don't always have to second guess everything, except for at the beginning when you're setting up, you have to make sure it's working. Okay, so first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna do throttle cut for safety, turn that on, switch H. Looking at the stick, throttle's not working, that's good. Throttle cut's off, and now the throttle is working as seen by this monitor mode here. You can see it move. Okay, throttle cut's back on. And then I'm gonna go into flap system. We'll make our assignment to switch B. Now, we also have auxiliary 2 attached to switch B. We don't want that. I forgot to set that up, so we'll click, scroll down to system setup, disconnect RF, and go down to channel assign and unassign auxiliary 2 here by clicking cancel, which is gonna inhibit auxiliary 2. Now, when I go over to menu, you can see
Safe mode. AS3X
nothing is changing.
mode. AS3X mode.
Okay, nothing's changing there either because we didn't make any adjustments to the positions. But I'm gonna go ahead and set this. They tell us what they wanted this flap set. They don't tell you that on this because it's a plug and fly. So I'm gonna just set one way, but not all the way to 100, and one the other way. And I'm not gonna do any elevator correction until we have a chance. Actually, this thing's already mounted. We don't have to do any control linkages, so I'm gonna go ahead and
Right.
set that. I'm just gonna assume 6 and 9, just for fun. And we're gonna do speed at 2 seconds. So then what you can see is like 63 and 39 doesn't matter. That's just like up and down. And then neutral would be 0, hypothetically. And you can see on this little monitor, it shows you what the output would be and about the time it takes for that change to occur. But we'll come back and revisit that once we're hooked up. And then we're not gonna do any mixing, but we are gonna do dual rates and expo. Okay, so we'll set that to switch F, which is up here. Make sure they can see the F there, camera crew. Okay, so the first mode we'll set to 5, then we'll set it to 10, which is a doubling effect. We'll fly in the middle first, and then we'll go to a doubling effect again with a little bit less rates. Now keep in mind we'll have stabilization as well, so we start here. If we need less, we go here. If we need more, we go there, okay? And then we set that new setting on each of the 3 axes to whatever we left at the landing on the maiden. Almost never have to mess with this, but I have messed with it generally when we don't have stabilizer on, okay? So I'm gonna go from aileron to elevator, and then I'm gonna do the exact same thing, 5% in the top setting, 10% in the middle, and then 20%, and this is the expo. And then I'm gonna drop my rates down to 90 in combination with the highest expo. So that's where we're gonna start. And then rudder, same thing. We'll set it to switch F. And you're like, but why do you want all 3 set on the same switch? Well, I've explained this a million times. I'll explain it again today. In case this is the first time you've seen Brian Phillips RC, if you want to help support us, buy the planes from the links in the video description below. If you hate the Alpha Jet, buy a different plane from the links in the video description below. The reason I do that is because I don't want to have pilot fatigue, which comes from having too many different things going on at the same time, especially during a maiden flight. I want to make the maiden so I can get back to the ground. And that's why I have basic, simple, chunky differential. Now, I'm also going to have differential is a bad choice of word because differential is another function of the radio system. What I mean is I want differentiation between the 3 different flight control systems. The way that the plane is going to fly, I want there to be enough change that it matters, but not so much that it's like insane. I don't want to go to like 50% expo and like 30% rates. Yeah, it'd be too much. Okay.
And it's not so much change that if you're having a problem with one access
Yep.
and you change it, you're not going to screw up.
Yeah, it's not like
else.
my role, if it's high speed shuttering and overcorrecting and oscillating on the roll axis, well then I can turn down my master gain for all 3 axes. But then maybe it's really touchy on the elevator because it's a little bit too tail heavy, but that helps with flare on landing. Well, then I can just go up to a little bit more expo to help me get it to the ground, make my adjustments, fine tune the elevator only, and then come back and set the other 2 the way they were. But then I have 1 master gain for stabilizer. I have off in case it's way too much stabilization. And then I have auto leveling as a failsafe. Again, failsafe, bad choice of words because that is another technology that's unrelated. Okay, so throttle cut, we already set. So at this point, we're basically ready to set a timer for 5 minutes is what they recommend. I'm gonna go ahead and go with a 5-minute timer. I'm gonna make 1 out active. So if I put the throttle over 25%, it's gonna start counting down. At 1 minute, I want voice. At 20 seconds, I want nothing. At 10 seconds, I want voice. It's gonna give me a countdown. And then at expiration, I want tone and vibrate with the tone every minute thereafter. That is highly preferential. Hit cancel, clears the timer. Starts the timer again, as you can see. Cancel, clears it, sets it back. Okay, throttle cut's on. All my different knobs. Let's see if they're all tied to something. That is tied to something. That's not. This is for flaps and elevator compensation or correction. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna scroll back down to system setup, disconnect RF, and I'm gonna go into the channel assign, and I'm gonna go ahead and make an assignment for auxiliary 2 to switch D. Now I'm gonna walk out, I'm gonna scroll over 1 step, and you can see auxiliary 2 is now being commanded by this. Nothing happens there, that's what we want. Nothing happens there. That's just dual rates and expo. This is not being used. This is throttle cut. This is gonna be used. So we have used, 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 and used. So we're pretty much ready to rock and roll. We know where we're gonna land things, so we can go ahead and do that now. So we're gonna jump back over, we'll just leave this in the monitor mode. And as we walk over and approach the plane, we can start plugging things in. Okay, so gear is labeled. So gear is on channel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, as in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We know that the brown needs to go toward the front of the plane in this case. So channel 5, gear. Nothing magical about that. It's just, I usually try to grab the one that's gonna be the least tangling. And so I just kind of get that. Looks like flap would be the next least tangling. Flap goes next to gear, actually past gear. So I'm gonna go on this side of it. I just think about the way the wires are gonna be laying, and I just try to line them up in such a way that they look nice. Okay, this is gonna be a really clean install. Okay, so elevator, of course, is on channel 3. Again, just counting by going 1, 2, 3. And then the brown needs to go toward the front of the plane, so I'll slide this under. Guys, if you like this type of long format content, you wanna help support us, best thing you can do is buy the airplanes, buy the batteries, buy the transmitters, receivers, whatever it is that we review on this channel. If you don't like the one that we did in this video, no harm, no foul, just buy one you do like. We've reviewed so many airplanes and so many helicopters and tanks and cars and all that stuff and boats. Well, we haven't done boats, but we'll do boats someday. You know, that you should be able to find pretty much anything you want. But as we check out the latest and greatest for you here on our channel, the way you can help us build clout with these manufacturers is by buying from the links. That helps them to know that you bought because we watched our video here. So, ailerons. Also, we do the in-depth radio setup because we know that's a big area of difficulty for people, especially people getting back in the hobby that aren't familiar with the way these things work. And we're gonna help you get to that position. So if you wanna help support, you know, your local hobby shop, that would be me today as it pertains to what we're doing. And you're like, but Brian, that's an internet-based order and I'm just screwing over my local hobby shop. Well, to a certain extent, you probably are. But the thing is, if I'm the guy answering all your questions, then support me. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. Was that rudder? Yeah, so channel 4. And I've just double checked and you're like, but Brian, there's only one plug, just plug it in the only open hole. True, good point. Okay, so you see this? I've got that weird twist and I wanna see if I can eliminate that. I don't know if I can. I can probably just do this and hold it together. I'm trying to do this so that this is not a problem in the future. So anyway, getting back to what I was saying earlier, if you want to help support our channel, we have Patreon and PayPal as well. If you have trouble buying some things because you're in Canada, for instance, we do work with some companies that work with Canadian orders, and other companies don't, and so that's really unfortunate. Or if you're over in in Europe somewhere and the shipping is outrageous, or if you're in Australia or New Zealand, we know that we have a lot of followers over there that watch our stuff, and they can't order from our links. So we understand you might need to do the Patreon thing if you want to throw us a buck here and there. That does help. But at the end of the day, the best thing you can do to support us is watch the videos, like, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, then obviously come back and watch our new content when it's released. We try to release about 2 or 3 times a week. And if you're getting help from this type of footage, we really appreciate you guys coming back and leave comments and questions and things like that. We have a lot of interaction here on our channel. We try to keep up, but we are way behind right now. That's a pretty sweet install.
Yeah, it is.
I love it. It's so simple. I use
really nice.
one zip tie. It was like the easiest thing ever. This has been a pretty easy install, and our radio setup is actually been pretty dang easy too. So I must say, we like when a plane goes together well, but we also like when a plane radio sets up easy, because then that makes our job easier. And also it tends to be an easier flying plane because there's not some weird thing going on. But we still have to bind, and we still have to set up AS3X and safe. But as you guys know, AS3X and safe is gonna be the difference between a cheaper receiver and a more expensive receiver, but it's also gonna be the difference between a better flying plane, in my opinion, and a worse flying plane. Most planes can really stand to gain from a stabilizer, but the bigger you get, the less necessary it's going to be. In my opinion, I love having stabilizers even on big planes. That is a preference issue, and I understand that. So if you don't like the stabilizer, or you're used to flying, you're a very skilled pilot, and you really don't like the way they just look too locked in and too realistic, and you'd rather it look herky and jerky, then just don't do that.
Tell us how you really feel.
So anyway, guys, that is a preference issue, and I admit that. Okay, I love the way that that's working right now. It's very simple, it's very easy, very basic. Okay, now, first thing, when you're setting up a new plane and you don't know where the landing gear are gonna come out, you need to be very mindful that they may eject out and hit something. So just be very careful to look underneath the model, look where your gear doors are, look where your nose gear is, make sure nothing's gonna open into your plane stand, and that is very important, because if you do, you're probably gonna break something. So first thing I'm gonna do, throttle cut, sticks in neutral positions, everything like I would normally do before I start up a plane. Now my gear switch, that means gear are up for me, and that means gear are down for me. Okay, so I always have the switches in the same position to start an aircraft. There are sometimes weird exceptions, like we did an F-14 not too long ago, and it has a, like a condition for where the wings are in the wing sweep. And so sometimes you'll run into those weird conditions. Or I did like a loiter mode on Crescendo once, and so that was on switch C. But generally speaking, you always want to have your conditions of the switches the same so that you don't have an accident. And the same is true for switch G if you're doing thrust reverse. Now, to do thrust reverse on this plane, you can do it, but you'd have to replace the electronic speed controller, and we're talking about 100 amp ESC. That's going to be expensive. So I would not necessarily recommend it. By the way, did the manual mention anything about the C rating on the pack? That's one thing we didn't mention. And so I want to talk about that real quick before we jump in a little
Should
deeper.
be right towards the beginning.
At the beginning of these books, they'll show you what they recommend. They just say 22 volts. They don't even say. Huh, I'm surprised. Okay, so it doesn't say. So really, I think in most cases, if you've got a 30C smart pack, you'll probably be okay. If they don't say, it's generally okay with a singular ESC, especially in an 80 millimeter size class on a 6S. You're usually okay on 30C, unless you just really womp on it, and that is a good way to destroy batteries. But you get a twin like this, you will destroy that battery if you're not careful, okay? So first things first, when you're ready to bind, that's where we're gonna transmit the connection. We're gonna set up the connection between these two devices, between that device and this. That's not when safe gets activated. You don't have to do any of the special binding for safe select anymore. That's all done through forward programming. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go into the function list and scroll down to bind. Now you can just have this on, and then you can click that when you're ready. But I have to land the battery, so I'm just gonna leave that there. I wish that would not time out so quick, but it does, unfortunately. Okay. Treat the plane like it's gonna fly off the plane stand, which it's not going to in this case. We've never had that happen, but just treat it like it will. Okay. I'm just getting my leads back and out of the way. And then I'm gonna press this one button here, the bind button. This goes into that flashy mode, which is the binding mode. So now I have to scroll back down to bind because it always times out. Click yes, and then bind. Okay, so everything worked there. Just looking at my servos for the flaps, they are not binding, which is important, and that was one of the things they warned us about. So we got elevator. That is cool. That is a lot of deflection.
That's a lot.
And then we have ailerons, and we're not even worried about the direction of travel yet. So now the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and put the canopy on, because we can do that now that we know that we have everything working. We don't necessarily have it done, but we have it working. I wanna make sure that this lead is in the best place possible. And I think I'm gonna actually kind of tend to put it here, I think. I'm gonna put the canopy on. Oh yeah, it's gorgeous.
Wow.
Okay, so now the next thing I wanna do before I get any further is check the gear. Gear are up. That is some cool landing gear. I love the way they come out. Now those gear doors should close. Sequencer's perfect. Oh, by the way, see that bright, day bright LED? Not a big fan of the way that this is glowing through the body. That can be fixed. If you wanna fix that, you take aluminum foil, you cut a small piece, and you wrap it over the top, and you cut free where the light is, and then you just paint it white and you're done. I'm gonna leave it for now. You can also use that aluminized tape that is used for HVAC duct work. That works really nice, but it's heavy, so don't overdo it. You can also tape around the light, and you can spray it with white spray paint, and that will cover it up. You can also use white nail polish, which we have links to Megan's nail stuff. So if you ever want that, it's down in the description there. Okay, so this is a strobe on the tail. That's very cool. Strobes historically are not my favorite on the wingtips because they're not as easy to see, and you may need to know what your spatial position is, and that thing is off, okay? Now, is it cool? Absolutely. Would I rather see this thing as a strobe? Absolutely. I want those nav lights to always be on, but that's the way XFly set this one up, and it's probably customary because that's the way the real plane would be set up, I'm guessing. Okay, I just know nothing about this plane. So let's take a closer look before we get any further on these landing gear. They look phenomenal. Oh, yes.
Wow.
Show the people how smooth
Those are
that
like,
is. The action is amazing.
sometimes they're so tight.
They're so tight, yeah, they're so tight they don't
the
work.
The wheels are hard, but the springs
But
are
look how
really
soft that spring is.
That's
That
really
is
nice.
amazing. That's gonna help protect everything. Of course, we got the steerable nose gear. And these are beefy too. I am loving,
they really are.
loving the way that is. Guys, you can't normally press that with your one finger.
No.
That's gonna be amazing for landings. I can't wait to see this thing take off and land. It's gonna be gorgeous. And the way that it's gonna squat is gonna be so much fun. And also, I think it's gonna help get the thrust angle just right for touchdown. I kinda wanna drop it just to see how it looks. You ready?
Wow.
How's it do? Lock play? That is amazing.
That is really
I am
cool.
loving that.
Very nice.
Okay, so getting back to the next step. So now the next step is, of course, we gotta start reversing channels, and we need to get our flaps linkage installed. But in order to figure out where the flaps are gonna go, I wanna get all the direction of travel stuff worked out first. And that's gonna help me to ensure that I don't make a mistake and forget, because that's critical. And honestly, the flaps are, arguably optional, okay? All right, so let's look at this with the plane pointed toward us. So I can sit down here, elevator up, yeah, not so much. So we'll click, go to servo setup, we'll go to reverse, and we'll reverse the elevator. Okay, so elevator up, elevator down. And they are perfectly aligned, by the way, which I really like. I didn't have to do that. Okay, roll left, that's correct. So that wing's gonna go down, that wing's gonna come up. Roll right, yes, 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 and steerable, yes, and steerable. Okay, so we have all the control channels going the right direction, with the exception of we can't test flaps until we flip the plane over. Now, also my gear are reversed. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to my gear, and I'm gonna quickly flip this whilst also doing this so I don't drop it on the ground. Ready? Just like that, okay? So now I have that switched, And I'm gonna go ahead and put it upside down back onto the plane stand so that I can look at the flaps. Now you could probably do it without flipping it upside down, but for the sake of the video. By the way, I can pick it up by the wing, and this thing is strong. I didn't know what to think because that wing has this weird area that we're not used to having on the planes, but this should be quite easy. Now I wanna also point out this decal that's not really a good design. You see that decal right next to the D?
Oh, yeah.
That's unfortunate because that is gonna buzz, I guarantee it. You know what we're gonna do? We're just gonna head it off. We could cut it, but I'm gonna see if I can press it down first. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm just press it down. That should be fine. We'll just press it down. That worked perfect. Okay, so now let's talk about flaps. First of all, I'm gonna clear my timer, takeoff flaps, landing flaps. Okay, so you can see I'm not overdriving them into anything, okay? So now I can scroll into my flap system and I can go in here and I'm already on this mode. You can see because that box is around it. Now I'm in the top mode, now I'm in the bottom mode. I'm gonna click here, I'm gonna scroll this all the way up to 100. So far we're not overdriving the servo. Just be mindful that there are two, make sure they're both good, okay? They're both good. And then obviously the neutral position is fine. And then in that position, we're fine. So as you can see, when I have this toward my belly, like this, that'd be landing flaps, takeoff flaps, and then just regular flight mode, okay? So when I'm coming in for landing, I set it up like that. Then of course I would, oh, that is so sweet. I love that action. I love that spin, that is so cool. So coming in for landing, drop the gear. That is so sweet, Isla. Gotta love it, gotta love it. Okay, so then I've got my landing flaps on, and that pulls the linkage forward, which is what we want. And that's going to move this down until it hits, basically, because I want every bit of that. In fact, we might need to trim that so we can get more deflection. But you'll see it from the top, so I don't know that I wanna do that. Okay, so then this one, it looks like they have not indicated what hole to put it in, but I would imagine it needs to go into the outside hole. And when I say the outside hole, I mean the outside hole on the control arm of the servo. And I do wanna go like that, okay? So now I've got that pulled all the way to where it's hitting. And that's what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make that hit the fuselage. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab a pair of needle nose pliers or lineman pliers, would also probably work better, so that I can spin my ball linkage. So lineman pliers just have a little bit thicker head than a needle nose, so it's a little easier to hang on to this. Now I want that to be there, and so I need to bring that out just a little bit. So I'm gonna grab it with the lineman pliers and just walk it out, walk it out, walk it out, walk it out. Make sure that doesn't pull off. Okay, walk it out, walk it out, walk it out. Okay, walk it out. Boy, I'm getting close, dangerously close to the end of that throw. But I would say it's not pulling off, so I think we're good. Okay, I need to go in half. Okay, cool, so that's where it is. So I've got that fully deployed, and that's all I can get. And yes, I am not using my ball link plier, but I can get those so you guys can see what that looks like. You can use regular pliers if you want. It's a little easier with ball link pliers for this sort of application. But I am a big fan of having tools that do more than one thing. So this is definitely a specialty tool. And I know a lot of you guys tell me like, get this tool or get that tool. And I'm like, I have a lot of freaking tools, people. I have a lot of weird tools for work too. Okay. So that goes actually too far back. So you can see there's just not that much deflection. You see that's going past center, okay? So in my neutral setting, that's about, you're actually getting, boy, there's just not hardly any play here. So I'm gonna actually go above 0. So in that setting, see how that's level now? Minus 15. See, I'm just walking it until it's centered. Okay, so minus 16. Jeez, that's disappointing. So now I gotta do takeoff flaps and then landing flaps. Boy, that is sucky. I don't like that.
If it doesn't have flaps in real life, because
no, there's real flaps on it in real life. There would be absolutely real flaps on real jet. These jets have leading edge flaps. They have leading edge droop or flaps. They have all sorts of stuff. Okay, so this, I'm thinking the easiest way to get a little bit more deflection, because I want more. I just don't know. I feel like we can get so much by just trimming the corner, but then you're gonna see it.
Yeah, I know.
I don't like the amount of deflection. I don't feel like there's much for landing flap. The other thing you could do is you could cut this right here and you could allow it to just move a little bit when it hits. And then it would still look good, but then I think it's gonna flap in the wind. I don't like that. So really, I just kind of picked a direction, and my limitation is where it hits, okay? So when I'm in this full down setting, I'm actually gonna back it off just a hair until it stops touching. Goodness gracious, that is just not very much movement, guys. Look at that. Show them right here, like really close. That blue makes it hard to see, I realize. Can you turn the flash on? Show them how tight that is. So I'm not touching, but I am like right there. And I'm actually gonna adjust this too. See, all I do is I just move it. Well, if you put the shadow so they can see the shadow, they'll be able to tell the position. See, I'm just walking it up. I think -10 is probably about right. So -10, and then the takeoff flaps. Let's do 50, and then we'll do 80. Oh yeah, that's pretty good. Okay, I'm happy with that. So now we should be able to just pull this back, and all we're doing is replicating that gap on the other side. A little bit disappointed in the amount of deflection, but it might be fine for this wing type. So I'm not sure if it's gonna be an issue or not, to be honest. I would assume it's not gonna be a big issue, but all we have to do now on this side is we're gonna take the lineman pliers and just work this a couple of turns so it's easier to move in and out and make sure that doesn't yank out. That's how we lost an SU-27 just the other day. We had one of these linkages rip out on a plane. And by the way, we don't beat manufacturers up when stuff like that goes wrong. I mean, stuff like that does occasionally go wrong. And as long as they take care of you when something like that weirdly goes wrong, then I call it, what the heck happened there?
Wait a minute.
That ball link's on the wrong side, isn't it? Is it?
Probably.
Oh yeah, that thing should be on the other side for sure. So how the heck am I gonna get that out, you suppose? I wonder if I can spin it out, because I'm not gonna be able to get a screw in there. Because the Phillips screwdriver, show them, here, like you're not showing this side is what I want them to see. There's the Phillips screw on the inside, guys. I'm not gonna be able to get a screwdriver in there. Unless I take the wing off. I could take the wing off and then get it off of there, because that needs to be on this side.
If you take the wing off, can you even take that little ball off and switch it?
Yeah, there's no reason why I wouldn't be able to.
That's probably the best option.
Yeah, it's either that or I try to grab the ball and move it, but then that screw is what needs to be released, and I don't think it's gonna work any other way.
Yeah.
Okay, so that means that I need a 2mm drive, right? Because that's what we were using.
For the screw.
We're just gonna show this process just to show you guys how easy it is to get access to this. I know it's kind of a unique thing. I don't think you guys are gonna have this problem, but if you do, you'll know how to deal with it. And so that is one thing that we pride ourselves on here at Brian Phillips RC, is that we do show all the stuff that we run into. Now that doesn't mean that we show things that we didn't run into, and that's one of the problems, is that I think sometimes people assume we're gonna show every conceivable problem. No, we just show what we've run into. And then we point out things that we think might be a problem. Again, we don't beat up manufacturers for like a manufacturing defect that they could never have found. You know, like the other day when we had that SU that had the linkage, like what are they gonna do? Like put them on a tug test and test every single one, like millions of them?
How many linkages have we dealt with in the last 8 years and never had that problem?
Yeah, so I mean, and I think people have had issues, so they're sensitive to that. But it's like, we wanna be fair to these people too, because it's like, I didn't catch it, and I built the thing. Okay, so now that that's disconnected, we are talking about this piece here. So now that the wing is off, it's quite easy to get at with a Phillips, just a Chinese screwdriver of Phillips nature. So we'll just grab this one here. Oh, I just laid that right on top of my screws. Sheesh. Okay, so this now I can just go in here and just turn that out. It should be no big deal. And just flip it on the other side. See that? Pretty simple.
Help you?
Maybe.
Okay.
So now that can go on this side instead. That is so bizarre that that was backward like that. We've never seen them install those backward. So I don't know if you guys are going to get that backward on yours, but if you do, you should fix that. Because you're not going to reach otherwise. Camera crew, put your hand out. Hold this.
Okay.
That way, because I just don't have quite enough hands to do this. So it was on the top hole, not the bottom. Okay. Well, at least it was easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, super easy fix. Okay, so now once we get this plug back in, kind of annoying, but super easy. I have to assume that was a mistake because I don't think they would have ever wanted you to hook it up on the other.
I don't know how you would have even had it reach.
Yeah, I don't think it would. It just so happens that this was the harder of the two wings.
So I can come around if I need to.
I don't know if we'll need to because of the first time we kind of break it in.
Yeah.
It usually doesn't have the same problem again, but we'll see here in a sec. Okay, so we'll just get that ready and then I'm gonna actually, I'm just gonna do this and put my elbow over here and then push that in. And once I get that started, then we should be good to go. I don't know if you guys can see, I just kind of tucked my armpit over and around. Then I drop my screws and everything onto my radio. Ooh. All right, so now that we have that part done, which was unexpected, we can go ahead and continue with the radio setup. I feel like I had it this way, didn't I?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it was closer to you.
And then I have to flip this around. All right, so now back to the radio setup. I have to go ahead and get this positioned mechanically so that that ball link goes onto there at the right position. So you have to go back in with this, hold it, and then just walk out the ball link adapter. Make sure you give it a couple of tugs. Make sure it doesn't pop off. And then I want to go until it's touching and then back just probably half a turn. Or we could just set it to touch on the other side so it's like a very easy to mimic position. See how it's touching? I'm gonna go like half a turn. Okay, so that's just almost touching. Let's go 1/2 turn more. Nope, too much. I gotta walk it out 2 turns or 2 half turns. I work in half turns because that's what I do when I'm adjusting trim pots on electronics because I adjust things for a living. It's one of the things I do. You may have noticed that from my videos. Okay, all right, great.
Cool.
So now we can check. Okay, now guys, look at this. With the flaps fully retracted in normal flight mode, we have good clearance here. We're just a little teeny bit off there on the inboard portion. And I think that's actually true on both sides. So I need to walk that down just a little bit. So I'm gonna go back to my flap position and I'm just gonna walk it. So it's like 15 is about where it's gotta be, I guess. Now, how do we know 15 is right? Just by guessing and checking. And yours might deviate a little bit from what I did, but this is what I ended up with. 15, 50, 85, okay? Minus 15, minus 50, and minus 85, okay? So very basic setup on this plane. A little bit weird because of the problem with that one ball linkage, but other than that, this was a really easy build.
Yeah.
And we love it when they're easy. So let's go ahead and flip this plane over, put it on its own 3 legs, and then we're gonna do our precise comparison real quick here. Mm-hmm. You can see, and this is an 80, so it should have pretty good amount of power. So I'm quite excited to see this thing. I love the way it squats, just like the F-18 has the same kind of squat to it. But I love this being soft the way it is. That's gonna make for some sweet looking landings. Okay, it's also gonna be demanding because of those hard tires. Okay, elevator up, elevator down, roll left, roll right, take off flaps, landing flaps. And I'm thinking if I have any issues with this, I'll literally just sacrifice the corner of that flap and I can make those things go down a lot more. But that looks sweet so far, so we'll see how that goes. Obviously yaw's right, and then the gear, we already know they work. So everything is set, and now at this point, since everything is set in the correct direction, we can jump into forward program. We're gonna set up AS3X and safe. This should be a pretty quick process. Okay, so now it says gyro settings, so I'm gonna click that, and it says first time setup. So first time setup is gonna help you to designate your position. It says make sure all your wing type and all that crap is set, any sub trims, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Okay, set the model level and press continue. Okay, now set it on its nose and then hit continue. So there's continue, so I'm just gonna actually pull it back toward me. All we're doing is we're just gonna teach the model what position the transmitter or the receiver rather, in this case, is. Okay, so I'm gonna click continue. Okay, look, said standby, and then look, now it's got the correction. It says orientation 5, and it's got the Spectrum logo, the bind button going forward. Let's just pop open our canopy and see if that's right. As you can see, that is not the same. Oh wait, my airplane's backward. There we go.
There you go.
So that is correct. So my airplane's pointed this way, Spectrum logo is going that way. So it figured out the orientation, and then that of course tells it what direction the pitch, roll, and yaw axis are going to be translated to. Okay, so now we'll continue the radio setup and the forward programming here by going to continue. Gain channel set. We're going to set that to this. You can't just turn the knob like before. You have to actually scroll in auxiliary 3. There you go. And then we can apply those changes. Now it's going to reboot your receiver. So just be aware, you see the one dance. That's 1. 2 means safe is on. So that means safe would be on. Okay, so I'm going to click for menu, go back into forward programming, and now we're going to do the first time setup for. Oh, I got to do flight mode setup too. Flight mode channel. Remember, that's just a label. It's on auxiliary 2. Okay. See how that's changing? I want that active. I want that inhibited. And I want AS3X on because that'll be on with safe. Okay. So we'll walk back out of that. Now we can go first time safe setup. Before setting up safe, a flight mode channel. Okay, it's already been done, so I can just go in here and reconfirm that. See, took a second to populate. It automatically populated from the previous menu. And we can continue. I have it in the mode I want for safe. Select the desired flight mode, switch position. So this would be AS3X. That's going to be safe. It almost never works, so just so you know, and I'll have to rotate it or something stupid, but we'll show you that. Okay, AS3X gains must be tuned to help reduce wobble, blah, 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 whatever. I'm not worried about this. Now, if you have a plane that's a tail dragger, let's look at the plane for a sec. This is pretty flat. It's going to be pretty much perfect, so you're not going to have any adjustment. But if you have a tail dragger that sits like this, you may have an adjustment here. Or if you have a plane that has a receiver that's mounted a little bit off of perfectly true or perfectly true and perfectly true, then you have to make adjustments for that. And that's where this is done. So that's where you can make your adjustments here for your fine tune, okay? And it shows you the way you can understand what that means. So positive would be more nose up, and in the roll configuration it'd be roll to the right, and the negative would be nose down or roll to the left, okay? Okay, so it's populating the menus. Okay, cool, so now that it's done with that, we can scroll in here and change on mode 3. We want this to be self-level angle demand. There's also envelope, which is just the limits. And then there's something else. You can do transmitter model, and that's like where you have predetermined setup that it just pulls from your actual local transmitter. Whoops. So I'm actually going to go self level angle demand, and then you can set this all, which is pretty cool. And if you go to the envelope, then you can just have that. It's just going to limit your up and down so that you can't flip it over on its back, you know. But I want auto leveling. Okay, then we can apply. Now we're just going to let it reboot. 1 dance, 2 dances. So now you know when you first turn it on, not just based on
AS3X mode off, safe mode.
Okay, so now a couple of tricks. We're going to test this before we even go into the menu. First things first, elevator up.
Off, safe mode.
That's the first telltale sign. It's the easiest to do. Roll left. Out of safe, you have more deployment of your control surfaces. In safe, you have less. AS3X and off are both going to allow you to have full control authority. So if you hold the stick in a configuration like this, you'll see a drastic change. Now, the second very easy thing to see is with throttle cut on. I'm going to flip this plane upside down. You'll notice that the ailerons are going to be working, and so is the elevator, to try to level the aircraft. You can see that elevator pointed up. But the easier way is roll it on its back. It's going to find the quickest path to center. See? So you find that middle and it's looking for level. This is where safe beats reflex V2 and all the other different vector and everything. The auto leveling is so much more far superior on AS3X based equipment, which of course, when you're dealing with safe, you're going to get that. It's better. It does a better job. But I don't use auto leveling. I just show how to set it up in case you guys want it. And it is nice on jets. If you get disoriented and you're going very fast and you're very far away, safe is a very nice thing to have, okay? Also for fail safe, if you would lose radio contact, you can have that turn on, which is kind of handy, unless you fly into something. So that does happen too. It's never happened to me, thank God, but maybe someday. Okay, so we have off, nothing, and then AS3X. I don't hear any change, and that's because I haven't given throttle. So I'm going to give throttle. 41%. Holy cow. Okay, throttle cuts on. I hear stabilization, but I'm going to show you stabilization. Now, if we go into forward programming, we can change our gains to a very demonstrable level so you can see it. But we're going to set it back to 1 because that's generally what we want, okay? AS3X settings. There's your 1X. And I'm going to go into fixed adjustable. And currently they're fixed. I want to make all of them adjustable. They will be adjustable by default if you set it to the roller knob, okay? You want them adjustable. So you can make adjustments on the fly, and then you can fix it and give up that channel to something else once you've adjusted it. Okay, and then you can also set up priority and heading. I never mess with that crap, but you can. Okay, so I'm gonna go to 4 times gain. Now that is a live change. So now watch this. This is gonna change the pitch axis all the way up. See how much you can see that? So when I lift this, it's gonna go up to resist. Up. Now when I lower it, it's gonna go down to resist. Down. See how it went down? But there's always that bounce when you stop and move back up, so just be aware. You're looking for down is down, up is up, down is down, up is up. You can really see it now. Watch the rudder. When I move this toward the camera crew, I'm gonna lay this down so it doesn't get hit. You're gonna see it go toward the camera crew. When I move it toward my left hand, it's gonna move toward my left hand to help counter that environmental impact, which is my right hand, and not a stick input here, okay? So I'm gonna go toward my hand and it moves toward my hand. When it moves toward the camera crew, it moves toward the camera crew, okay? Now another thing you can do that's really handy is if I hold this plane and I hold the nose into my belly, I can move this and really see it good while I spin this aircraft. Also, I can see it really good when I do this because I have my eye going down the length of the plane. Elevator up or rudder. Aileron up, aileron down, aileron up, aileron down. Now they're sharing a channel, so you should only have to check one. but I'm just gonna give you guys a quick shot of that real quick here. Okay, so as I go like this, you can see that rudder goes toward my left, or toward my right, excuse me, toward my left now toward my right, and when I stop, it centers. Okay, now elevators, up, elevator down, aileron up, aileron down. Okay, now camera crew is gonna take back over, and here's the next thing you wanna check. I wanna change the gain, and I wanna do it quick. So my gain is all the way up, listening, off, on, still on and safe, off. Okay, I accidentally hit C. On, master gain, half, master gain 0. Okay, master gain 50, off, back on. Now that we've established that everything is working the way we want, I'm gonna change this from 4 times now that we've established the direction of travel, the existence of travel after giving throttle 25%, and we've experienced AS3X and safe in safe mode. We've tested all the different parameters. I'm gonna change 4 down to 1. Now, that is an experience thing. It is not necessarily going to be right. We may need more than we can get now by going like that. So if in doubt, run it at 2 times or 4 times, and then you'll just have to have it most of the way down. I've just learned I want that knob to be approximately in the middle when I'm done flying my maiden. And the reason I want that is because when I go from this plane to that plane to that plane to that plane, then I don't have to constantly be tweaking this when I go between. I want it to be about the middle so that it's about right when I fly a plane. I might want to tweak it just a little bit more or a little bit less on a given windier day or a given calmer day. But generally, I want to start about where it's supposed to be. And that way, when I go between model, I don't have to constantly dink with it. But I want it adjustable, if possible. Okay, so now that we're at 1 time, we have AS3X set up, we have safe set up, we have flap set up, we have everything set up, and you're probably thinking to yourself, goodness gracious, Brian, that's a lot of screwing around. I can't believe how hard that is. Guys, this is not that hard. I literally can do this in my sleep. I'm clearing the timer. If you can't, I understand, but do it a few times, you'll get used to it. It's really pretty much the same process for every plane. One big challenge we're facing right now here in Brian Phillips RC is because I want to possibly get the IX14. I don't want an IX20 because that's just so far from what most people are using. I want to be able to continue to teach people how to do this radio setup. I feel like this is one of the most valuable commodities that you're gonna have as a newer pilot or a returning pilot that's coming from Futaba, Crystals equipped, or maybe doing control line back in the 70s or whatever. If you're just getting back to the hobby, you're in the right place. Because if you go to the hobby shop and you're getting this type of help, work with them. My experience is that generally you're not gonna get that type of help. Also, I just noticed an asymmetry here. My flap on the right side is just a little bit off of what I see on the other side. We're gonna fix that right now. That's just something I noticed. If you wanna show them real quick. It could be that both of them are a little bit off. But what I was getting at is if you can't get the help you need coming back into the hobby and you're frustrated, you're not alone. It is a common problem that we've heard from a lot of different people. That's not to beat up on the local hobby shops, but at the end of the day, they don't have time to spend 2 hours or 3 hours helping you do this plane setup. And so what they tend to do, and you know, honestly, what I've seen a lot is they will tend to help people buy cars because there's just more money in it. So they do that. Now watch this, guys. See this little pry bar here? What we're gonna do is we're gonna get in here. And again, I don't wanna beat up, all the shops are doing different things. See, that pops it right off, really nice. Now, I'm gonna actually turn this out 1/2 turn, okay? Did I go out? There we go, that's out. 1/2 a turn. That should get that thing back to where it needs to be. Oh yeah, way better. That's way better now. Camera crew, can you hold that right there for just a quick sec? Right there. You need to put your hand back further so it doesn't tip.
Okay, well, I got it.
Yeah, just so I can clip this on real quick.
Yep.
So guys, what I'm getting at is we're here for you. We wanna help you to have success in this hobby, and it behooves us to have more people getting into the hobby because we need legislative authority.
We also need to drive the cost of this stuff down. We got hit really hard with inflation, just like everything else did. And the truth is, what I would like to do is I would like to see, you know, like a few million people doing this compared to the few 100,000 that are doing it as we currently sit. Because what do we got? Like 350 million people in the United States, 350, 400 million, something like that. You know, if we have 1 in 100 people flying RC aircraft, that's still a lot of people. And we don't have enough people to really constitute a majority of anything. And so what we're left with is the few bad apples that do crazy, stupid things that make us look bad and cause problems need to be outweighed by the people that are doing the right thing, having a good time, really enjoying this hobby to the most. And we can outweigh the stupidity. Of course, the stupidity does tend to be public. So anyway, that's my take on it. And we want to help you guys be part of the RC experience. It's so much fun. It's the most immersive experience that you're going to get in RC. That looks so much better, by the way. So much better, even here, even there. I love it. It's so much better now. But we're here to help you with that process on Brian Phillips RC. We want to help you guys figure out how to use this, the most expensive commodity that you're going to have, that's going to be used on, in my case, 135 planes, okay? And we have other transmitters that have other planes on them too. So just to give you an idea of how many planes we've got hundreds of them. And I love this stuff. I love teaching people how to get the most out of these things. And this is not the most you can do. You can do a lot more than what we did here, but that's going to get you all the basic functions. It's going to get you safe. It's going to get you AS3X, which is stabilization. It's going to give you a mode with nothing as well if you don't like it, or if you think it's a little bit too much, or you can't get it gained down to where you need it. It's going to give you all the stuff you need to have a successful maiden flight. And once all those tools are in your tool bag, you can copy that model. You don't have to redo it every time. We just do it that way because we want to teach you how to use the utility that you paid all this good money for. Now, that being said, if you see me jump up to a 10 in the near future, don't hate me, because we may be doing that just because we have now run out of channels 3 times in our experience. Or if you see me doing an NX or an IX14, that doesn't mean that we're going to be abandoning the NX line. It just means that we're going to use it when we have the higher demand models, like probably the F-16 we did not too long ago, where we're doing telvons and we were doing, you know, flapperons and all sorts of functions. We just run out of channels eventually on an NX8. Even though we have a lot of channels, we can get most of the planes done. And 99% of the people can do this, or not 99, 90% of the people in the hobby can do an NX8 and get everything they want out of it. So we're here to help you guys make good decisions in that regard. And we're here to help you guys vet these products, because everything looks good online. Everybody is going to try to tell you this is the best, fastest, cheapest, cleanest, prettiest, whatever-est. That's not what we do here on Brian Phillips RC. We're going to show you the way that this plane performs in a similar environment with similar piloting skills, and we're going to work to grow. And as we grow, we're going to bring you guys along with us. So hopefully we've answered all the questions you had on this Alpha 80mm EDF. It looks pretty sweet from XFly. I'm excited to see it fly. I hope I'm not excited in vain, because I have a really hard time seeing this thing not be amazing in the air. But I must say it is definitely nicer looking than I thought the art made it look. Because when I look at that art on that box, I think, especially the red, white, and blue, I just feel like it's not a very flattering angle. And I think this thing looks amazing in person. And just to give you an idea, if you guys are into the more authentic Navy or Air Force liveries, they do have the livery there, which is going to be in the gray. And that would, like, if I was picking, that'd be the one I'd pick. Because as you can see, you know, when we get into the realistic models, you're going to have a realistic livery here, but I prefer the Navy and Air Force. But this thing will show better on video, I bet. We'll be able to see it up against the clouds a little bit better. And look at all the lights. I'm just loving it. I do kind of wish these were solid though. And if you really wanted to switch those, you could probably switch them without too much trouble. I like nav lights to be solid because I can see that. If I'm rolling out in final, I don't want to be waiting 1.5 seconds for that light to be visible, and then only be visible for this long.
Yep.
I want it to be visible all the time. Whereas the anti-crash beacons, I would actually not be
bothered if those flashed, because you're not really depending on that for your everyday navigation experience. So anyway, camera crew, what are your thoughts? Do you have any thoughts on this particular plane?
I think it looks, I like it better in person than I did on the box also.
Yeah. Which is funny. We've noticed that about a number of different planes that
Yeah,
we've done
and
in
I
the
don't know
past.
if it's just hard to photograph them well so that they look
To
cool.
photography them.
To photography them from the camera crew.
I think that they look really good in the videos and stuff, but I just feel like sometimes we don't do justice on the artwork on the box.
Right.
But then other times the artwork on the box makes them look almost even better, you know?
I don't know. I'm excited to see it fly. Like you said, it's not something that we are used to here.
Right.
But you kind of learn to appreciate different stuff the longer.
And those wheels are sweet too.
I know. The gear is really cool.
I love the landing
It just
gear.
takes me back to the days when you first started this and you're like, I just need one jet and like one like trainer plane and then I'll be good. I'll have like all the things.
Yeah, that didn't last
I
very
don't
long.
don't fly 6S. Those batteries are expensive.
Those batteries are expensive.
If only that was on video somewhere.
It probably is. So guys, actually speaking of, if you're curious about how we started this channel and what we did to get where we are, you can literally go back and watch our original footage. It's all there and it's unedited and it's very much worse than what we do now. But at the same time, it's the humble beginnings of our channel, and it's, I mean, some would say that we're still very humble currently in our performance, but that's okay because that's probably true. But we do love doing this, and we have one of the best camera crews in the world, of course.
In the world.
My wonderful camera crew and wife of many, many years. So if you guys have questions, definitely leave them in the comments below. We're gonna try our best to get back to you. Obviously the Alpha Jet or the Alpha 80 is something that we're really excited to be bringing you from BitGo Hobby. So definitely give them a shout out if you want to buy this plane. When you do buy it from the links. If there's coupon codes, discount codes that we know about, if we're aware of them, we try to put them on brianphillipsrc.com, and then you'll be directed either back to YouTube. Generally, our stuff just points back to YouTube and or to the point of purchase. And like I said, a time or two throughout this video, when you buy these planes from the links, you're helping to support us financially and our family of 6 by actually getting us commissions from the companies. But we never want to strong arm you guys into what particular model. We're more about building a relationship with you guys and also helping to build this clout within the RC community so that we can review more planes. So our objectives are pretty clear: help prevent one and dones, bring people back to the hobby, and then basically strengthen the hobby in numbers, because this is the most immersive, the most wonderful RC experience that you're gonna get. It's the best analog to real life, in my opinion, and it's also a really great pathway for people that go from sitting on the ground in a chair to flying in a real airplane. Is the humble beginnings of RC aircraft. And by the way, if you think you can do RC because you fly full scale, I hate to break it to you, you can't. It's a different skill. Even though you may know a lot of stuff, it's a different skill. And you just have to learn it. And it is hard to learn. But it's easier now than it's probably ever been in the history of time to learn. And part of the reason is because you got guys like me, and not just me, there's people like me all across YouTube that are trying to help people get into the hobby. And our salute to those folks. We appreciate you too. We got to grow this hobby because there's so much amazing fun to be had. And we hope that you guys will join us and stay tuned, because we have so much more. We can't possibly squeeze it into a tight hole, but I'm going to try my best. Thanks for watching.